Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Scared Schmidtless, the true crime and horror podcast hosted by yours truly, Alexander Schmidt, hence the name. I hope you've all been doing well this week. I've been doing pretty well myself, and I just want to quickly apologize for the lack of podcast episode the past week. I have been very busy. I have my own YouTube channel and I was very focused on that, and then I've also started a couple of new jobs that I sort of need to have my priority on at the moment so I don't get fired. You know what I mean? When you start a new job and you don't want to get fired straight away, so you have to sort of dedicate all your time to it. And then on top of that, I have my own other podcast I run, so I'm running a very tight ship at the moment. But I've brought you guys a couple of stories or experiences I have found perusing various Reddits, and I haven't fully read into these, so without further ado, we may as well get into it. But before we do, I just want to say, if you guys have a story or an experience you want to share with the show, the email is scaredschmidtlesspod@gmail.com. Or just have a browse in the show notes. They're always there. I also have a Twitter and Instagram now, and I think they have like 3 followers, so we're sort of popping off at the moment. Without dragging it on too much, we may as well get straight into it. And the first experience that I've found comes from the Creepy Encounters subreddit. This subreddit is dedicated to mildly creepy encounters where the person wasn't in immediate life-threatening danger. So this story comes from user CripinLocke. I hope I'm saying that right. And it's titled, "I think my neighbor is watching me through my attic." So I moved into a duplex with my ex about 3 years ago in what we thought was a safer part of the city. One of our neighbours, Amber, works in the duplex rental office, and her husband, Ed, was at the time fresh out of prison and had been doing and continues to do landscape work for the rentals like motor lawns, cut down trees, etc. Other than that, he is home mostly doing odds and ends, things like tinkering with his mower or truck or something. They are both super nice people, very kind and loving towards others, and always offer to help out. We have smoked weed together a few times. Nice. They've included Ed smokes more than Amber. That's a bit of a flex. And have talked all about things, and have talked about all kinds of things, so I thought I could trust them and felt very safe being their neighbor. I once mentioned how sometimes when I'm home alone, I hear steps in the attic over my room and what sounds like a chair being dragged. How sometimes the noise follows me around the house always freaks me out to the point of calling someone just to feel a little safer until the noise dies down. Ed said, "What? You think we're spying on you?" in a laughing way, but it creeped me out a little. So then I break up with my boyfriend and he moves out. This is recent, so a few months ago, Ed started texting me, asking if I wanted to smoke while Amber was still at work. I declined every time, finding different excuses because I felt uncomfortable around him. Then he asked if I wanted to have sex with him because he thinks Amber is cheating on him. What the fuck? That doesn't make any fucking sense at all. I definitely shut that down and it was awkward as fuck. I didn't tell Amber because I didn't want to get kicked out or have some horrible, awkward tension, and I hate confrontation, so I kept quiet. That's when I start to hear things in the attic above my room more often. It freaked me out even more when I woke up to a loud bang outside my front door about 3 to 4 a.m. When I went to examine it, there was a small lockpick outside my door on the ground, but no one around. I kept the lockpick, and the next day I texted a picture of it to Amber to let her know I thought someone was creeping around, and she said, "Oh my god. Oh, that's Ed's. That's his ice pick, not a lockpick, sweetie. No one can pick your deadbolt with that. But I know the difference in a 4-inch skinny-ass lockpick and an ice pick. I'm so scared to be alone here, especially at night. Our attics connect, and it's not outlandish to think he could be up there spying on me. I even found a freshly drilled hole in the ceiling of my room." Oh my... Yuck! That's fucked! I just put wadded paper up in it and trying not to think of it. I honestly hope nothing comes of it and I'm just being paranoid. That's fucked. You need to call the police. Because there's definitely evidence. You also need to move fucking house. That's creepy. Oh, yuck. I didn't know you could share attics. I'm just reading some of the comments as well. Someone says, have you checked all the vents for cameras? I didn't even think about that. That's fucked up. Yeah, I'd be moving very, very quickly. Who knows what he's doing watching you. He could be masturbating while you're asleep. Yeah, yikes. No thank you. Moving along, I found another encounter on the Creepy Encounters subreddit, and this comes from NamelessApparition. Very, very nice name. Title is Tinder Date Tried to Kill Me, Not Safe for Work. So this one's sort of a little bit of a longer one, but we'll jump into it right away. This was November 2016 in Glasgow, Scotland. I was desperate, I must admit. I'd been single and alone for some time, and it was driving me crazy. That's when I met Laura. She came across as a very sweet girl and all, but she was in a hurry to meet me. So I did. She insisted that we go to the pub. No fancy dates were necessary to her. I didn't mind this. At first glance, I knew I'd been swindled. She looked different from what I'd saw before, but I didn't mind. I was just happy to have a date. I'm not exactly good looking myself. I gave her a chance to redeem herself. We got talking, and after a few beers, things started to get a little more intimate. Before I go further, she was quite an overweight girl with long dark hair, and she had eyeshadow similar to Amy Winehouse. She said she was a huge fan. Well, all I'm going to say is look how that ended up. I'd asked about her hobbies and interests, etc., but she'd asked me to talk more about myself. I told her about my job. She yawned sarcastically. Let's talk about your sex life, she said. Oh, what about your sex life, Mark? If you don't know, that's a reference to The Room. How's your sex life? She had slipped her foot out of her shoe and started rubbing my groin with her bare foot. What the? Needless to say, I was aroused. So yeah, I didn't have much to say in that department, as it had been a while since I had sex. I was very honest with her. I asked about hers, and she said she has her kinks and that she's done things that I'd never have imagined. Want to see what I can do? She said, let's go to my place. So at this point I was starting to feel very drunk, which I was amazed at as I was only onto my 4th pint. I did have 2 shots though, and put it down to this. We waited for a taxi, and she was holding my hand excitedly, whispering into my ear that she was going to do some things to me that I'd never experienced before. In a way, I couldn't actually wait to just sleep. My head felt heavier than the rest of my body. It was like the ground was moving beneath my feet. I haven't read the rest of this, but I'm gonna put it down to she's drugged him. The rest was a blur. I couldn't even remember getting into the taxi, but I do remember falling down the stairs, and she was above me laughing at me. Come on, she said, get your sexy ass up here. I struggled up the stairs, and before I know it, from what I remember, I was in her bedroom naked. It was like I'd blacked out. I tried to sit up only to find myself tied to the bed by my arms and legs. Then she entered the room dressed in bondage gear. I was deeply aroused but confused at the same time. She performed sex acts on me before having full intercourse. I lay there delighted, don't get me wrong, but something still felt off about it all. I had dozed off for a bit, and I'd been woken up by a weird screeching sound. What are you doing? I'd said as she was wrapping up my legs with cling film. Hush now, she said, this is the best bit. I was no longer tied to the bed, but I felt very numb and couldn't move my arms and legs. She kept wrapping me up from my legs upwards. I was screaming at her to stop, and she had placed some cling film in my mouth to shut me up. I was struggling to breathe at this point and had tried my best to dislodge the ball of cling film from my mouth. So if you don't know what cling film is, it's like the stuff you put over, say, a leftover bowl of spaghetti. That's my example because I literally just had that for lunch about an hour ago. Eventually, I was totally wrapped from head to toe. I could barely see outside the cling wrap. She told me that this was my punishment for being terrible in bed and that she has many other victims just like me, all wrapped up waiting to die. She left the room and I gave out some muffled screams. Then I felt myself slowly fading away. I woke up what was now the next day, now able to breathe. This time there were people looking at me. They'd removed most of the cling film and had resuscitated me. I wasn't aware of this till they told me. It had turned out I wasn't actually in Laura's flat, but an old-fashioned hotel. The police were all over me, asking me questions about what had happened. I attempted to show them her Tinder profile, but she had deleted the page. I am grateful to my rescuers that they had saved me, but forever traumatized by this incident, and I end up with panic attacks when I see people that are similar to her. It took me a few years to finally trust people enough to go on dates, but I'm still on the road to recovery mentally. I'm just glad that I'm still alive, but wondering if she's still out there and if there are others like me that didn't make it. So doing some reading of the comments, there seems to be similar stories with like similarities. I don't know. It seems like this girl's done it to multiple people. Yeah, one of the comments, this is an insane story, would fit well on the Let's Not Meet subreddit. How did the rescuers find you? It was the hotel staff. I posted on Let's Not Meet and the bot rejected. Oh, okay, that doesn't matter. That's insane. Well, you know what they say, not to actually just meet people straight away. Someone linked an article from The Independent. The title reads, Police hunt murderer after man's decomposing body found partially buried and wrapped in plastic in Epping Forest, which is very close to where this guy was. That can't be a coincidence. That has to be linked somehow. I've watched enough true crime on Netflix to know where that goes. The next experience I've found has come from the subreddit r/ghosts and is by user OpethSam98. Now, the r/ghost community uses real experiences and discredits ones that are fake or, not legit. So these are all based on people's personal experiences. So this one is called Entity Imitating Us. So we have a ghost story. So I've moved into my current apartment on June 30th. At the beginning, it was pretty nice. Very nice, vibe and all. Lately, though, there are a couple of weird occurrences that happen around the apartment. And then he goes on to list 6 different examples of said occurrences. 1 day, one of my roommates was alone, gaming on his PC. He suddenly heard the front door open and a voice resembling my friend saying, "Oh, cute cats." Then me laughing at it. I was at work. My friend was at her place. Well, at least he appreciates the cats, I guess. Number 2. I was home alone one night. I was chatting online with people and listening to music. Suddenly, I heard as if my friend entered my apartment and she said, "Oh, hello, kitties." Number 3, so the third occurrence is one of my roommates and I have deja vus like 3 to 4 times a week each, while my other roommate used to have a lot, but now she has none. So a deja vu is like something that you've just felt you've experienced before, but you aren't aware of experiencing it. Number 4, the closet doors in my roommate's bedroom and mine often just open and slam shut at random. The pantry door will often just slightly open at random too. It's in between our bedrooms. Oh, so what we've established so far is the ghost loves cats and it also loves to eat food, even though it's a ghost. Number 5, we'll often hear laughing, whistling, or straight up chatting. Always a male voice responding to light female voice. And number 6, one of our cats will often chase, nothing around the apartment. It will chase it, get scared, hide, then chase it again for the whole night. That's probably the creepiest occurrence, is the fact that your cat is chasing nothing. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Apart from these incidents, we often hear each other's voice at random. Often, I'll be home alone and hear my male roommate's voice. My male roommate hears mine, and my female roommate hears both of us chatting. It gets really heavy and weird, and we don't know what to do anymore. One of the top replies is, "At least they like the cats." And, that's what I said earlier. At least the ghost or entity loves cats. So at least your cat's sort of getting attention, you know? Someone else said a mimic demon. So I'm assuming that's just a demon that mimics people. Dude, I'd just be pleased that they enjoy, your pet's company. That's what I'd be happy with. Now, the last experience that I bring you comes from the r/no sleep subreddit. This is a story-based subreddit, and it can be sort of based on legitimate stories at times, and then there are also stories that aren't legitimate, but they're just written for people who enjoy horror. So this one comes from the r/no sleep subreddit from user Mandahrk, and the title reads, "I should not have subscribed to my girlfriend's OnlyFans account. I admit it, I am a simp. And no, I am not proud of that fact. If I could go back in time and stop myself when I first started acting like one, I would, in a heartbeat. But I was a horny little goblin back then, and just the tiniest bit of attention from a woman was enough to fry my brain. In my defense though, she was absolutely gorgeous. Brown eyes that twinkled mischievously, plump, kissable red lips that parted to reveal white teeth like perfect little sugar cubes, and thick dark hair that gently tickled her shoulder blades. Her dresses clung to her like they couldn't get enough of her body. Well, neither could you, really. And I understood why. She had just the right amount of curves in just the right places. I wanted to sink my teeth into them. Just scrumptious. I couldn't believe when she smiled at me. My jaw dropped open like a drawbridge. I said jawbridge. I stared at her from my seat in the cafe, wondering when the dream would end. It didn't. Not even when she got up and click-clacked over to me, her heels making her hips sway hypnotically. She slipped into the chair in front of me and asked whether I was staring at her. Dear God, her voice. It was like she was pouring nectar into my ears. I shook my head like an idiot. She laughed, and it was music, like birds singing an ode to the falling leaves on an autumn morning. Cute, she said, and bit her bottom lip. And that was that. One meeting and she had me wrapped around her fingers. To say that our relationship was a whirlwind romance would be an understatement. It all feels like a blur to me, like the view inside a train that is zooming past yours in the opposite direction. I had no idea how she so quickly wriggled her way into my life, settling in like she had always belonged there. Just ignore the Facebook message I just got. I felt like God himself was smiling down on me, and not one to spit in my blessings, I agreed with whatever she suggested, unknowingly losing myself in her piece by piece. What was that Facebook message? Was that an important Facebook? I am trying to record a podcast. I changed my dressing sense for her, dropped my childhood friends like the dead weight that they were, quit playing video games because it's a child's hobby. Fuck off. No, it's not. No, it is not. I'm playing Fall Guys at the moment and I'm liking that a lot. Same with Overwatch, even though that is a very dead game. Not something a grown man in his mid-20s should ever waste his time with. That's part of the story, I didn't just say that. I sold off my G.I. Joe collection, got a job I hated, bought a car that was way too expensive, and took out a loan for a house much bigger than we could possibly need, and added her name to the fucking deed. All to please the pert little succubus. At least the sex was heavenly. So heavenly, in fact, that I didn't even protest much when she told me she was going to start an OnlyFans account. It'd be good for us, she said, flashing her slender wrists at me, making my heart melt. We need the money, babe. Besides, they only get to look. Only you can touch me. I sighed, loosened my tie and grunted. Just don't tell me what you post on there. I don't want to know. She squealed with joy and jumped on my lap, reminding me why I was putting up with all this shit in the first place. That's when things started to go wrong. Terribly, horrifyingly wrong. I would wake up from nightmares I could never remember, more exhausted than I had ever been when I crashed into bed that would get soaked to the wood with my sweat. I began sleeping longer, but had absolutely no energy during the day. My skin was losing its colour. My eyes had dark circles deep like gorges, and my hands would tremble with weakness. At first I chalked it up to stress. I was overworked, without friends, stuck in a superficial relationship and burdened with staggering financial obligations. Of course my body was finally starting to give out. I wasn't a machine after all, was I? But then the bruises started to appear. On my hands, thighs, back, knees, elbows. My body was being dotted with these little red marks that would inexplicably appear each morning, and they would hurt, like the bite of a fire ant. She had no clue what was causing this, but I did. It all began with that damn OnlyFans account, and I knew I was going to get my answers there. I quickly set up an account and subscribed to hers, but to my utter disappointment there was nothing out of the ordinary there. Just lingerie pictures, a couple of full body nudes, that's it. Nothing that would explain what I was going through. This was because she had another account, under a pseudonym, one that she'd never told me about. Thank God for my connections in the IT sector. I was only able to track it down thanks to them. As soon as my phone buzzed with the message telling me about her alt account, I ran into the bathroom at the office and locked myself in the first empty stall. I wiped the sweat off my hands and unlocked my phone. With shaky thumbs, I made the payment and got access to her account. And what I saw made my head spin in fear. It was the most bizarre collection of pictures. Animal skulls mounted on some sort of greasy altar, candles arranged around a strange chalk diagram on the floor of our basement, grainy photos of rotting carcasses of dogs with their entrails ripped out and laid in a circle around them, close-up pictures of accident victims in their cars, limbs cut off, flesh burnt black, skin melting off, eyes crushed to a vicious jelly. How the fuck were those photos up? How did she even get them? Why had the folks over at OnlyFans not deleted them? I could feel bile rise up in my throat as I scrolled past those pictures, and the comments to those pictures were just as confusing. Strange symbols and squiggly lines that I'd never seen on a fucking keyboard made up the comments. All of them. Hundreds of comments, all in what seemed to be a completely new language. But what terrified me most were the videos. A primal terror clutched at my chest as I watched those videos. Unlike the pictures, she starred in each and every single one of them, as did I. Some of them were innocent enough. They'd start with her holding the camera and pointing it at her face. She would bring it closer and closer to her mouth until her blood-red lips were almost touching the lens, and then she'd start whispering. I plugged in my earphones and turned the volume up to max to hear what she was saying, but it was utter nonsense. I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. It sounded like no language I'd ever heard, yet scared the shit out of me. It was like she was running her tongue around inside my ears, threatening to condemn me to a fate worse than death. She would then walk and come stand over my sleeping form. The video would now speed up and she would stand over me for hours. For fucking hours as I tossed and turned, tormented by my nightmares, she would stand over me, pointing the camera down on my face. I took a second to calm my heartbeat, which thumped against my chest, my ears and my temple before moving on. Another video. This time the camera was set up on a tripod next to my bed. She was there again, hunched over my sleeping form, but this time she didn't just watch. She bent over, splayed my forearm out, and drove a little needle into it, quickly licking the drops of blood that bubbled out, before turning and grinning at the camera, the greenish night vision making her eyes gleam. I gasped and almost dropped my phone. There were so many of these videos, her injuring me, licking the blood off, and then grinning at the camera, literally hundreds of them, all with the same script. And then I moved on to the most recent video. The screen flickered to life and our basement came into view. It didn't look anything like I was familiar with, lit up by candles that bathed the room in a dull orange glow. The entire basement had been turned into some sort of altar, like the pictures I had seen earlier. Unclean cattle skulls were strewn across the room. The floor was slathered with squiggly chalk lines set up in strange symbols. Tapestries with dizzying designs embroidered on them hung from the rafters, and smoke arose from somewhere off screen. In the middle out of all of it though was the love of my life, nude, with her entire body soaked in blood. She was writhing on the floor, touching herself and moaning in a hoarse and guttural voice. Propped up on a small table in front of her was a framed picture of me with the eyes burnt off, probably with a cigarette. The fear that crashed into me brought tears to my eyes. She began rubbing herself faster and faster and faster and faster until her hand was just a red blur on the screen. Sharp shadows danced on her face as she began speaking. Soon, she said. Soon, 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 soon. Her voice rose with each words until she was screaming in a manic frenzy, until the words reverberated like gunshots in the basement, and then the video came to an abrupt end. I blinked furiously to clear my rapidly fading vision, trying to wrest control of my body from the terror that threatened to shut it down. And then my phone buzzed again, and I almost had a heart attack when I saw the message. Hey babe, when are you coming home tonight? Oh fuck, I got chills all up my body then. I didn't have any chills until that last bit. The top comment is, what's her OnlyFans account? Yeah, what is it? Send me a link. You should go back home, OP. Did you see that last video? You're definitely going to get laid. They're going to be these stories and experiences that I bring you today. Thank you to all the people who posted about them. So that's going to be a wrap on the show today. If you want to send a story into the show or have an experience yourself you want to share, the email is scaredschmidtlesspod@gmail.com, or just have a browse in the show notes. Leave the show a positive review if you enjoyed it, and definitely reach out to the show if you want to. I'm not scary at all, I promise. I also have another podcast called Arrogant Aussies. It's definitely different to this if you want to check it out. And I also have a YouTube channel that I'm always uploading on. So thank you all for listening, and I will most likely be back next week.